Hello, good evening, good day, wherever you are, and welcome to episode 266 of the Ask Abhijit show. I hope everybody is doing great. Let us see who all is there on the live stream. I can see Shashank Kaushik, Hunter Kenway, Alvin Rodriguez, Oju025250, Leslie Bab, Aniket Tripathi, Manish Shrestha, Kenil, McLovin, Yashwant Sudhir, the magnificent Sri Nehruji, Neha Sharma, Ayolai, Global Citizen, Aryan Musk, Namaskar, Anudipta Sen from Assam, Hitanshu Mehta, Akash BA, Lathangi Suresh, Malik Sayed, Dheeraj Kamath from the US, Geopolitical Dubey from Indore, Anonymous Scientist, bonjour, Rahul Himtani from Mumbai, Reddy Always Ready, Shitanshu, Freedom from Outcome from Canada, Shahraj, Jimmy Lee, Vande Matram, Latang Suresh again. Who else do we have? Akash BA. Who else do we have? Rahul Dunake. We have ICMBs. We have Kshatriya Ball. Thank you so much for your contribution and thank you so much for becoming a member. I really appreciate that. I never ask anyone to do that, but you guys still do that. So thank you so much. Thank you to you in particular. Abhinav Kamani, thank you very much for that. Who else do we have? We have Shah Raj, we have Ayush Mishra, Raghav Kamboj, Vansh Sharma, Komal Ist, Manisha Cardozo, McLevin again, Sai Asank, Uday Rajawat, Ankita Kachap, Ashwini Ranjan, Kamal01, and so many other people. Pritam, RJ Prophet, Bageshwar Army, Abhinay 172, Anonymous, IQ00, and very complicated names I'm seeing. So, yeah, thank you so much, all of you, for being here. And then let's get going with questions. This is a live chat episode. I will take your questions from the live chat. No super chats today either. Okay. So please go ahead. Please, I request you all, please ask me good questions. I like nothing more than good questions. So please ask good questions. And let's have a very interesting 1 hour episode. Okay. Let us see. Mr. Magnificent Nehruji says, what's the ideal time to make public any classified information and why? So the right time to make public any classified information is when the classified information is no longer sensitive or revealing it could still be dangerous to the nation's security. So when you reach a time where revealing the information to the public is no longer dangerous to the nation's security, that's the right time to make that classified information public. That's the very simple uh, you know uh, logic behind that. Okay, let us see. Let's have some hopefully good questions. Okay, McLevin says, I have noticed that that the US and China might say that they are enemies, but when it comes to action, the US has supported China when it counts. What do you think? Well, historically, if you go back to the 20th century, the US is the nation that was responsible for the rise of China. The US aided and abetted and midwifed the rise of China. The US came in Russia's way. The USSR and China were adversaries after the death of Stalin. They had these clashes, border clashes because of territorial dispute, the Ussuri River clashes. The USSR had decided to nuke China. The US prevented that from happening. Then it helped China rise. So they have done that historically. Even today, when they state that they are enemies, they are adversaries, you find both nations cooperating when it comes to Pakistan. And you find Pakistan deliberately undermining the collective interests of RIC, of BRICS, in a way that actually strengthens the US primacy globally. So, yeah, you are right that the US has supported China when it counts. China still seems to be supporting the US. I get the feeling that despite whatever the Chinese say, they have this deep inferiority complex when it comes to the US. They hero worship the US. They admire the US. They seek to emulate the US. And the only thing they seek is US approval, right? I mean, the Chinese believe they're superior to everybody else, but when it comes to the US, the Chinese have an inferiority complex despite whatever they say, and their actions invariably end up strengthening US primacy and hegemony. Right. What are the questions? Um, Anonymous scientist says, shouldn't India deepen its ties with Israel further, as they can provide cutting edge technology and the US seems to be their vassal? We should deepen our ties with Israel pragmatically and practically. Uh, we have to understand that Israel has its own interests, which are at times divergent from India's interests. And obviously, India also has its own interests, which are at times divergent from Israel's interests. But overall, we have a significantly broad uh, convergence of interests on a large set of issues. And for these matters, India should certainly deepen its ties with Israel. Yeah, you're right. Israel can provide cutting edge technology to India, whatever cutting edge technology it has, if it's open to doing that. And yeah, you could say that the US seems to be an Israeli vassal, but that won't really help India, because that's a bilateral issue between the US and Israel. And even if India tremendously upgrades its partnership with Israel, that won't change the India US dynamic. I don't see that happening. But overall, I agree that we should um, deepen our ties with Israel. Okay, the civilizational warrior says, you said that there are only 5 sovereign nations in the world: US, China, Russia, India, Israel. Excuse me, what? US, China, Russia, India, and Israel. Okay, fine, 5. Then what about nations like Singapore and Switzerland? Well, if I said there are only 5 sovereign states in the world, it means that, in my assessment, Singapore and Switzerland are not entirely sovereign nations. That's the simple answer to your question. Um, Devourer of Worlds says, can we really achieve developed India with the current chaotic system? No, we can't. The only way we will have a properly developed India, a genuine India, India that genuinely achieves its full potential, we'll need a different system. This system won't take us there, right? So, yeah, we can't achieve a fully developed India with the current system. Not possible. Malik Syed says, what score will you give, according to the Chavda Index, to these 3 major players in West Asia: Iran, Israel, Saudi Arabia, considering the 12-day war? The 12-day war hasn't really changed the dynamics, the scores in my index, because the scores are based on a set of open source factors. Um, what are the factors? One is your land area, second is your population, third is your annual GDP, the latest figures. Then you have military budget. Then you have energy self-sufficiently, which is either 1 or less than 1. Even if you're a net exporter, I give it 1 so that it's easier to calculate. Then you have number of nukes. Okay, that matters. Then you have power projection ability, capabilities. How far can you project power? That's another factor I take into consideration. That essentially is how many extraterritorial bases do you have, military bases do you have, and what kind of land area or sea area do they cover, that sort of thing. Um, and yeah, factors such as these. So the current war that happened, so this index is not something that is meant to be uh, modified every 2 weeks or every month. It's something that is meant to be updated once a year. So this war, of course, if a significant geopolitical upheaval happens that genuinely reshapes the balance of power in the region, for example, the 2003 invasion of Iraq, which destroyed Iraq, well, then I would be forced to significantly change the and recalculate the index in the middle of the year. But thus far, that's not happened. This war in West Asia, which involved Iran, Israel, and with US interference, it has not really changed anything fundamentally. Uh, Israel hasn't got a victory. Iran hasn't failed. Iran claims to have succeeded. In a sense, they have succeeded. In a sense, they have won by not being defeated. So nothing has really changed. So I will not change my scores at this point in time. My scores will remain the same. Um, Vansh Sharma says, why is Donald Trump so keen on ceasefires and what benefits will he get from that? See, my friends, all foreign policy for any nation, all foreign policy is an extension of domestic politics, especially when it comes to democracies. If you're a democracy and you are the leader of a country, let's say the president or the prime minister, in that case, well, you depend on the people's approval and you depend on remaining popular with the people in order to stay in power, right? Because no matter how far away it is, there is an election coming towards you. There's an election down the horizon, isn't it? Always. So because of that, it's very important to remain super popular among your people. And that's why whatever foreign policy decisions and actions you take, they are driven by your desire to remain popular domestically. So all foreign policy is an extension of domestic policy and domestic politics. So why is Donald Trump so keen on ceasefires? Well, he wants to prove to the people who voted for him that you made the right choice. That Donald Trump is the guy. Make America great again. See how great the US is. We can go all over the world and create and mediate ceasefires. And he will obviously make these exaggerated claims, like the completely false claim that he mediated a ceasefire between India and Pakistan. And then over here, it looks like he actually did that when it comes to the West Asia ceasefire between Israel and Iran. So he wants to demonstrate to the world, to his voters, that they have made the right choice. And he obviously has this objective, this great aim, this great aspiration of going down in history, of leaving a legacy as the greatest US president. I negotiated ceasefires all over the world. I was the greatest peacemaker. And obviously he wants to win a Nobel Prize. So these are the benefits that Donald Trump seeks to get. Okay. Let us see. Hitanshu Mehta says, will NATO Article 5 come into force if Israel attacks Turkey someday? Erdogan administration, the two countries' relationship deteriorated considerably. So there's a clause in NATO, one of the articles, I don't know if it's Article 4 or 5, whichever it is, which is the mutual defense clause, that if any one member of NATO is attacked, it is to be treated as an attack on everybody else. So if any member state of NATO is attacked, all other members of NATO are supposed to come to that nation's defense immediately. So with that understood, what happens if Israel attacks Turkey? Well, Israel is a special nation, you see. No matter what happens, so Israel is not a member of NATO, first of all. Turkey is. But what if Israel attacks Turkey? I suppose the US will find ways of not acting. Obviously, they'll be bound by the NATO treaty, but I don't think the US will ever do anything that is detrimental to Israeli interests. So I think in this scenario, the US essentially prevents NATO from acting against Israel. That's how I see it happening. Sumit Agarwal says, are news headlines scripted by the deep state to fool experts worldwide? It's not meant to fool experts. It's first of all, I'm not talking about the deep state here, but it's true that all news is propaganda. We know that. Even if you have any sense, you will understand that all news outlets, they depend on funding. Some of them, they depend on advertising, which is fine, but then the user experience is deteriorated because there's too much advertising. You can see some Indian news channels, they're like that. But then they also get funding from other sources. Maybe that's a major part of their funding. Maybe some channels get full funding from some sources. The question is, who's funding them? When you have various sources funding you, you are constrained to operate and act in a way that is not detrimental to your funders' interests and actually is positive for the funders, which is good for the funders' interest, right? You to further their interests. So if somebody owns you, you will end up serving them. That's as simple as it gets. And all news outlets across the world are owned by somebody or the other, either collectively or partially or whatever. So that tells us that all news is actually narrative. All news headlines are essentially propaganda, subtle propaganda at times, overt propaganda at times. Some of this could be funded by China, some of this could be funded by the US, some of this could be funded by Russia. None of it is funded by India because India doesn't play this game. We are good guys, right? So the objective of doing this is to create narratives and propagate narratives. And narratives are meant to fool the general population, the 99.9% people of the world. They can't fool experts, the 0.1%. Those can't be fooled. But as long as every news outlet is repeating the same lies, nobody will pay attention to the experts. That's how it goes. All right? Okay. Ananta Chandak says, can Starlink contain guns, and with their access on India, can they wipe out a place in an hour? Would something like this happen? What should we do if we have to counter it? No, Starlink can't contain guns because of the physics of the thing. So even if you could, fire a gun in space, which you can't, can you fire a gun in space? I've never thought of that. It's a chemical reaction. Does it need oxygen? I suppose it needs oxygen. Or does it not need oxygen? I'll have to think about it. I'm not sure what the chemistry is when it comes to gunpowder. Does it operate without oxygen? I doubt if it operates without oxygen. So if it doesn't ignite without oxygen, then you can't fire a gun in space. But even if you could fire a gun in space, hypothetically, there's a recoil. And these Starlink satellites aren't very large. They aren't very large in mass. So they will suffer from recoils and they'll get dislodged out of position. That doesn't work. That's terrible for the satellite. Then it can be used only once to fire one bullet. So because of the physics, it's simply not possible for this to happen. Okay. So then what is the use of Starlink? Starlink obviously is something that provides space-based internet, which can be used to undermine the sovereignty of a nation. And I've discussed that in the past. I'll not go into it right now. For example, let me anyway tell you. Let's say, for example, you have Pakistani terrorists who have infiltrated into Kashmir, or Maoist terrorists somewhere in the Red Belt, or for example, some rioters in some city in India, or maybe cookie terrorists in Manipur, or whatever. So wherever you have some bad situation, the Indian government can impose a phone and internet blackout for maybe 24, 48 hours or whatever it is. You can do it. But if Starlink is coming in, the terrorists or the rioters or whoever can simply use Starlink devices to coordinate with each other and outfox the Indian authorities. So that directly compromises India's sovereignty. That's why we should not have it. So that is the first threat from Starlink. Apart from that, I suspect that Starlink satellites will have very sophisticated surveillance equipment, which essentially means that each Starlink satellite could be a spy satellite, which could give the US real-time intelligence about what is happening on the ground. So I think that's the utility of Starlink, not guns. Jimmy Lee says, can we, as a cold calculation, swap Aksai Chin for Arunachal Pradesh to reach a temporary peace with the Chinese and demarcate the border? Something like the molotov-ribbentrop pact. Well, you have given us a nice historical precedent, the molotov-ribbentrop pact. Now ask yourself, Jimmy Lee, how long did the molotov-ribbentrop pact last? Molotov kept his end of the bargain, but Ribbentrop did not. And Germany ended up launching Operation Barbarossa. So that pact did not last. It was simply a placeholder. And Stalin himself knew that it's going to happen sooner or later, right? Everyone knew it was just a temporary thing. What's the point of a temporary pact? And why would you give up Arunachal Pradesh? And the people who live there, they are Indians. How can you do that to our people? Think about it. Even as a cold calculation. Why? Why do that? Aksai Chin, okay, you get Aksai Chin in return, but there's nobody living there essentially. So you give up a significant percentage of a population for a land where there is almost nobody living. Isn't that a stab in the back for the people of Arunachal Pradesh? How can anybody do it? So this doesn't make sense from my perspective. Okay, it's a good academic discussion, but no, we won't do that. Chirag Avasti says, why is new advanced technology always used in the military first before any other sector? Because national security is paramount. And lots of technology has multiple uses, dual use technologies. And you can't allow that to leak into the public sector, because once it becomes public, then other nations can steal that technology and use it before you for their military. So you always keep it secret. You always use it for the military first. And only when you have mastered it and you're beyond anybody else can you slowly release it into the public domain. That sort of thing. Raul says, to which physicists are you petrified of in terms of intelligence? How good is Edward Witten? Edward Witten is fantastic. Who am I petrified of in terms of intelligence? Well, I don't mean to sound arrogant, but I'm not petrified of anybody in terms of intelligence. Okay. Let's see what this is. Hitanshu says, we've come a long way. Back when American planes landed during operations in Iraq, it quietly shifted the trajectory for foreign policy towards the US. From there to here, times have changed. Is it true? We may have allowed US aircraft to perhaps potentially refuel in India during operations in Iraq, possibly. I don't remember what was the case, but maybe we did. Today, I'm not sure if US aircraft have such privileges in India. We obviously don't have any foreign military bases on our soil, because that would be a violation of our sovereignty. We are no one's vassal. We are sovereign. So we don't have any foreign bases on our soil. We sometimes have military exercises with the Quad nations, with the West, with the US, in which case we can temporarily give access to our air bases for refueling and other purposes. Right now, we have an F-35 of the UK, which is squatting on our territory on an airport in somewhere in the south that's owned by the Adani Group, right? It's squatting there for, I think, more than a week now. So that's unusual and so on. But overall, yes, times have changed. Our policy is much more clear now as to what we will allow, what we will not allow. And yeah, that indicates that we are very, very clear. We have clear red lines about our sovereignty. Okay. Nature Vibe, etc. says, can't Starlink operate without our permission? Starlink can operate without our permission. Yes. So even if we don't give permission to Elon Musk, it's possible that he could turn off the beams of the satellite when they pass over India. Turn them on. So which means that Starlink could be beamed into India, even if India does not give permission. Like he has said with respect to some other country, that we will do what we want and you can shake your fist at the sky. He has said that, right? So that's his attitude. That's his actual attitude. That's who he really is. So he can certainly switch on the Starlink beaming into India. The question is, will anybody be able to receive that without Starlink receivers? So as long as we don't give permission, we can. So as long as we have a situation where India has not given permission to operate Starlink in India, it means that we will not allow Starlink receivers to be sold in India or to be possessed by anybody in India. Make it illegal as long as Starlink doesn't have permission, which means that there will be essentially next to none, next to zero Starlink receivers in India, unless they are illegally smuggled into India. Right? So even if Elon Musk decides to beam his internet into India, as long as we ensure there are no Starlink receivers inside India, it will be very hard for people to actually use Starlink, unless you find backdoors and workarounds or whatever, which I suppose could be possible if you are very tech savvy, possibly. But overall, it can't operate, even if Elon Musk decides to, as long as we don't allow Starlink receivers to be used in India. Anonymous scientist says, would China become friendlier to India if it became democratic? Well, China will never become democratic. And even if it becomes democratic, it will have its own interests. And this is a hypothetical question, so what's the point? Hari Charan Gokul says, why is India singled out for casteism even though many nations had caste systems and caste like constructs? Look, that's a good question. It's because, yeah, there is Hindu phobia, and the West seeks to uh, single out India because it sees India as a threat. And you are okay. So, what is this caste system thing, right? What's this caste system? Well, there was no caste system in India. We had the Varna Jati system, which was a very intricate system of division of labor. And you had so many clans and lineages of people, of families who were occupied in very specific um, occupations for generations. And they would make sure that nobody else could take up the profession. They would safeguard it zealously, not jealously, but zealously, right? And this was an accepted practice in India. So that's why we had so many jatis and varna and all that. Jati varna system. It was very complicated. The British could not understand it. Their little minds could not get it. That's why they superimposed the four castes on India. Now, if you go back to the time of the Mauryan era, you had a Greek ambassador in Patliputra, which was our capital 2,500 years ago. The guy's name was Megasthenes. He wrote a report about India, a pretty tactical report about India, strategic report. And this report was called Indica. It doesn't survive, but there are other Greek texts that survive that have referred to the Indica. So we know partially what Megasthenes wrote about. And he wrote about Indian society and so on and so forth. And he said that Indian society was divided into 7 classes, not castes, 7 classes. And I don't remember what the various classes were, but you had tradespeople and priests and warriors, and 7 classes, not 4, 7. So during the Mauryan times, during the time of Vishnugupta Chanakya and Chandragupta Maurya and Ashok the Great and so on, you had 7 classes in Indian society, not 4. And look, any functioning society is an organized society. It has division of labor. And when you have division of labor, you have classes and these constructs that organically form over time. And the sign of a disorganized society is that it has no division of labor. It's chaotic. And if you try that in a company, if you try to make the janitor equal to the CEO and make the CEO do the janitor's work and the janitor do the CEO's work, that company is going to crash and burn in no time. And the same goes for any nation. And India's system was never discriminatory. It was never discriminatory until India came under foreign occupation, when India's culture and India's society could no longer function the way it had evolved to function organically for thousands of years. So imagine this situation, okay? I suppose many of you must have read or watched Harry Potter. So in Harry Potter, in Hogwarts, there is a caste system. 4 castes. What is it? Gryffindor, Slytherin, Ravenclaw, and Hufflepuff. But it's not a hereditary caste system. There is a sorting hat. So whenever a new student reaches Hogwarts, they have to go through the sorting hat process, and the hat decides which caste they go into. Right? Now imagine that there's a disaster and Lord Voldemort emerges victorious. And he destroys the sorting hat. And he decrees that from now onwards, nobody will be sorted into any caste. Then people will be forced to somehow keep the tradition alive, which means that they will say, okay, now that we no longer have the sorting hat, our kids will now on take the caste of their parents. So it becomes hereditary. Because of the foreign imposition by Voldemort, because the society can no longer function the way it was supposed to function. So it's forced to take recourse to suboptimal measures. Do you see what happens here? Voldemort destroys the way the society functions. So the society somehow wants to keep its tradition alive in some shape or form. And that's why it resorts to making it hereditary now, instead of making it happen through the sorting hat. And that's how these defects and deficiencies enter society, because the caste was supposed to be determined by the sorting hat, not by who what parents you have. And that's an analogy of kind of very simplistic analogy of what happened in India after the Turkic occupation of India and the later European occupation of India. That's how things became rigid, and maybe there was some oppression at some point in time. Only in the past 1,000 years, not before that. Please understand that. When India was under foreign management, you blame the managers and the leadership, not the workers, right? In any company, when the company crashes, that sort of thing. And yeah, there are other countries that also have had terribly oppressive systems. Good God. 1,000 years ago in England, at least 1 out of 10 persons wore a copper collar. They were slaves. 1 out of 10 people were slaves in England. But nobody says England was oppressive. Nobody says that. They had this gong farmers in England. Gong farmers. People who were allowed to come out only at night. And in England, they used to throw sewage and excreta on the streets. England was a disgustingly smelly place. This is all part of the historical record. They don't highlight it, but it's there. Look it up. So there was a profession called gong farmers. Gong farmers. These folks were only allowed to come out at night. And their job was to come with buckets and scoop up the human excreta on the streets of England and dispose of it somewhere. And those people were not allowed to mix with society. Isn't this a horrible form of discrimination and oppression? In France, you had people called the Cagots, Cagots, who were similarly discriminated against. In Japan, you have the Burakumin. Once again, even today they face discrimination. Even today, the Burakumin people face discrimination. You had this all across the world. We have never been that sort of thing, but we are singled out for this. And the worst thing is that our own people are brainwashed into believing that we were evil. We are a bad society. We have a bad civilization and culture. That's what your teachers and your textbooks do to you. Anyhow. Well, I'm glad you like it, sir. Harry Potter analogy is excellent to explain about casteism. Well, I'm glad that helps see things in perspective, hopefully. Amisha Mishra says, what's the significance of Axiom Mission 4? I haven't really been paying attention to Axiom Mission 4 because of all the other stuff that's happening in the world right now. The world is like on the brink of something or the other right now. But yeah, we have this Axiom Mission 4, which was launched by, I think, the SpaceX Dragon capsule. And you have an Indian astronaut who's gone into space. Well, okay, good. I forget his name, but I think he has reached orbit, if not the International Space Station by now, possibly. And all right, so I'll be happy when we launch our astronauts on our own rockets into our own space station. This is SpaceX launching an Indian to the International Space Station. The launch vehicle is American. The space station is Western. Well, it makes no difference to me. It's not some big cause for celebration as far as I am concerned. I don't know what the significance is. I haven't paid attention to it. I don't feel like paying attention to it. I'll be interested when we launch our own human space flight mission with our own rocket, our own spacecraft, and eventually we will have our own space station. That's what will interest me. That's what will get me excited. This, unfortunately, I'm sorry to say, it doesn't really excite me. Right. Yeah, I will not discuss about what other people are saying about something. It's not important what other people are saying. Okay, whatever the name is, sorry. The question is, what's your opinion on the criticisms that our diplomatic relationships are broken like never before in recent years? Well, the opposition parties, their job is to criticize the government, but hopefully there should be valid criticism. See, in recent years, everything has changed. The whole world is turning upside down. Everything is different today. Things no longer work the way they worked even 5 years ago. Forget about 10, 20 years ago. In the past, the world was stable. You could see geopolitical change happening only when you looked at the world decade upon decade. Right now, the geopolitical situation is changing every week. So the world was a different place 2 weeks ago than it was today, than it is today. I mean, what today is what, June 27? 2 weeks ago, June 10, there was no West Asia war, no West Asia crisis. Iran's nuclear program was fine. Iran and the US were negotiating about the nuclear deal and all. And look at where we are today, a whole different world. Things are changing so fast. The world is realigning very fast. Multipolarity and bifurcation of the world order and so much more happening, right? And India is growing, India is rising, and now India is being seen as a potential future threat by lots of countries. Because of that, we are under severe pressure from multiple fronts. This is a sign of our success, not our failure. If we had remained mediocre, like Dr. Manmohan Singh said, that we have no ambition of being a major power, then we would have had stable relations with everybody. Nobody would have considered us a threat, and that's why everybody would have stable relations with us, including China, including the US. But today they are all unhappy with us because we are growing. This is a sign of our success, not our failure. That's why they are leveraging Pakistan. That's why they've done a regime change in Bangladesh, East Pakistan. That's why they are trying to encircle India. That's why China is helping Pakistan, and Pakistan is sharing, battlefield intelligence with China. That's why China wants to sell the J-35 to Pakistan. That's why China and Pakistan and Bangladesh are doing this trilateral arrangement for the first time ever. That's why the US is siding with Pakistan over India. That's why Trump is investing in Pakistan. That's why the US is operating the Noor Khan air base. That's why Pakistan likely has US nuclear weapons, not its own nuclear weapons. All of this is a sign of our success. But it's very counterintuitive to understand that. But that is what it is. It's not a sign of our failure. It's a sign of our success. And the more we succeed, the more troubles we'll face. But that's the price you have to pay if you want to reach your full potential. Okay. I'm trying to find some good questions. Yeah, it's hard to find good questions. Okay, let's just take some questions because I'm not able to find like questions that excite me. Anyway, please, why don't you folks ask good questions? Please ask questions that are relevant to what's happening in the world today, and questions that will be valuable for everybody to hear an answer to. Please do that. Anyway, let's see this. Isn't water also a resource like oil? Of course it is. So why can't we sell water to Pakistan and Bangladesh instead of giving it for free? Look, what oil doesn't flow on the surface of the planet like water, right? Like rivers flow, but oil is underground, so we can extract oil and then sell it. But water is something that flows freely, and for us to stop it, we have to build dams and all that. I mean, it should be obvious, right? It's not like or our water exists in packages. Okay, let's see if there's some more interesting questions. Nilesh says, will India industrialize in the next 5 years? India is in the process of re-industrializing. We were the first industrialized society, the first fully industrialized society 5,000 years ago. We are in the process, then we were de-industrialized by the British fully. Now we are in the process of re-industrializing. We will be further industrialized in 5 years. I don't know what is fully industrialized, what it means. The West says that it is fully industrialized, whatever. India is in the process of re-industrializing. So India will be significantly further ahead in the next 5 years. What is the age of the sun according to the sun itself? Well, I have never had a conversation with the sun. That's why I have not been able to get the sun's perspective on what its age is according to itself. From the best that I know, it's about 4.5 billion years old. But that's my perspective. And that's the perspective of these little humans who live on the planet. We don't know the perspective of the sun. Because as far as I know, no human has successfully communicated with the sun. We're not aware if the sun is conscious, or if it can communicate, or if it wishes to communicate, and so on. Akash says Japan abandoned its dharma during the Meiji era to gain power. Must Bharat do the same, or can it rise as a civilizational superpower while staying true to dharma? First of all, let us stop using this word superpower. This is the Indian obsession with status and titles. To hell with the term Vishwaguru. To hell with the term superpower. Be practical, be pragmatic, my dear friends, my dear viewers. Forget about these titles, forget about the status. We are a nation that was, for the past 1000 years, on its knees. Then we were made to crawl on all fours by the British. Now we are standing up again. We are in the process of standing up and starting to walk. Before we can fly, we have to start to walk. Then we can start jogging. Then we can start running. Then we can start sprinting. Then we can perhaps start think of flying. So forget about being a superpower. Forget about that right now for the next 50 years. This superpower obsession is just annoying. But coming to the question, Japan did abandon Dharma. That's what happened as a consequence of the Meiji restoration. The samurais were killed off. They were the guardians of Dharma in Japan. And Japan became a completely westernized society, full of the cruelty of the West. They embraced it. They rejected Dharma. The Meiji restoration attempted to eradicate Buddhism, which came packaged with Hinduism from Japan. It failed. But the Japanese government and armed forces became entirely non-dharmic. And that led Japan to commit all kinds of horrific atrocities which nobody can deny. In Korea, in Manchuria, in China, in Nanjing, for example, good God, and so on. And that eventually also, you could say, to some extent, contributed to the fall of Japan and the continuing occupation of Japan by the Americans. So if Bharat wants to rise, not let's say as a superpower, but as a great power, let's do it step by step. Let's say Bharat wants to rise to the fullest extent of its potential, which means that Bharat will once again be the world's largest economy. Let's stop at that for now. Okay, we certainly have historically always been the largest economy. So that is something we should aspire to in the next 50 years, let's say. So do we have to abandon Dharma to achieve that? I don't think so. I think it will be horrific for us to abandon Dharma. That's the one thing we have going for ourselves. That's the one thing that we have, that was given to us by our ancestors 10,000 years ago. Something that all our ancestors have continued. And if we give it up, it will be the greatest betrayal of all. We'll betray hundreds of generations of our ancestors. What? It's like what the Christians call a deal with the devil. The devil will give you whatever you want, but in exchange for that, you have to sell your soul to the devil. I would never do that. So I would say Bharat should never give up its dharma. Bharat should learn from its history and from its dharmic heritage. Learn how to succeed. Learn how to win. Learn how to conquer. Sri Krishna tells you all in the Bhagavad Gita and beyond. So learn from the past. We don't have to abandon dharma. We have to stay true to dharma. Okay. Aryan says, doesn't China realize that Pakistan is a conflict of interest with respect to the US, and a symbiotic relationship with India wouldn't be better for all parties involved? I think China has eyes and ears. Yeah. China has eyes and ears. China is very well aware. Please, more than me, more than all of us, what relationship the Pakistanis have with the US. What the Chinese are doing with Pakistan is supplementary to what the US is doing with China, with Pakistan. And yeah, see, for example, the Chinese are possibly on the verge of selling J-35 fighter planes to Pakistan. And the question you may ask is that if China sells this 5th generation fighter plane to Pakistan, Will the Americans not get their hands on it and reverse engineer all the Chinese technology? And then will China not become vulnerable when China has to fight the US for potentially in the future? Well, the J-35s they will sell to Pakistan will be downgraded, dumbed down J-35s. They'll be the so-called export versions, not the full versions. They will not have the latest cutting-edge technology. They'll be dumbed down versions of the J-35. And they'll fail, just like the other Chinese systems failed. Okay? So China knows what it's doing. It's playing a very strategic game. Will a symbiotic relationship with India be better for China? Well, I suppose it would be, but China sees itself as very different from India. China sees itself rightfully as the more powerful nation, significantly more powerful, 2.5 times more powerful in terms of hard power. So they say that India should not be our partner, India should be our vassal. And India is not our equal, so we can't deal with India as an equal. Maybe they're right in saying so, maybe they're stupid in saying so, only time will tell. But that is the approach they have chosen for the matter. Okay. Okay, McLevin says, what's the key difference between Zohran? Zohran is that new guy, and Vivek that helped Zohran win. Both are of Indian origin. Is it religion or the political party that they represent? So this new fella, Zohran Mamdani, he has, I believe, won the mayoral election in New York. So he's gonna be the mayor of New York City. So what does this development represent, first of all? So from the Anglo perspective, from the perspective of the Anglos, there's the Atlantic and there's the two sides of the Atlantic. There's east of the Atlantic, which is England and the UK, and there's west of the Atlantic, which is the US. So here's the deal, friends. And by the way, here's the deal. East of the Atlantic, you have the mayor of London, Sadiq Khan. And now west of the Atlantic, you have the upcoming mayor of New York City, Zohran Mamdani. London is the financial capital, financial center of the UK, and New York City is essentially the financial center of the US. So you see, they are kind of balancing things out. So now that you're going to have a US version, an American version of Sadiq Khan in their financial center. Both are of Indian origin. Sadiq Khan is of Pakistani origin, if I'm not mistaken, but the same thing, Indian origin, yeah, because there was no Pakistan 80 years ago, and it was all India. So yeah, both are of Indian origin. What's the key difference between Zohran and Vivek? Zohran is a standard issue lefty. He has no actual agenda of his own. He just wants to come to power and prominence, and he will sell his soul if required. So he will do whatever his political masters tell him to do. It's just like Sadiq Khan. And as a consequence, they will get all kinds of benefits and stuff. So he's a typical American lefty. He is not a Republican. He's a Democrat. He's a recent immigrant, if I'm not mistaken. And the key difference is that Vivek is a grassroots guy. He's a self-made billionaire. He's a very highly intelligent person, Vivek. And that's what annoys white Americans. A guy who had nothing when he was born, very humble background, regular Indian background, becomes a billionaire through his own work and is super intelligent and dares to run for the presidency of the US. Okay? That's Vivek. On the other hand, you have Zohran Mamdani, who has no qualities of his own. He's a Nepo child, Nepo baby. His mommy and daddy were people of stature. His mommy is this leftist filmmaker, Meera Nair, fake Malayali person, actually Punjabi, Meera Nair. And his daddy is some fellow who is some academic somewhere. Indian origin from Uganda, that sort of thing. So Zohran has benefited from the fact that his parents are both reasonably well placed in society. And his mom helped him with his campaign, the movies and the campaign advertisements, the shooting and the filming of that and all that. His mom is a filmmaker, so she knows how to make really high quality films. So all of that helped. So Vivek has risen on his own. Zohran is a nepotistic child. That's a significant difference. But because he is part of the left, he is positioned and portrayed in a certain way as being not, which is not offensive to the US white population, and so that's kind of the key differences that I can see at this point. I have actually not looked into this Zohran person at all. I have no interest in the guy, but maybe I'll have to look into it in the future. Let's see. Let's see what other questions we have. Questions that I've hopefully not taken 100 times in the past. Let us see. Okay, this I'm sure I've not taken in the past. Suhas says, the recent Air India crash into a building raises doubts about 2611. Did the US hire engineers from Saudi Arabia and spend 10 trillion to dismantle the twin towers? On the serious note, what's your opinion? Okay, so I have not raised this question, but there have been people in the US who have been raising this question because of the very unfortunate and tragic accident that happened in Ahmedabad, the Air India, which still isn't resolved. I mean, it's still a mystery. How did it happen? But we'll not go into that. So the aircraft, which was a Dreamliner, Boeing Dreamliner, it crashed into a building. Very tragic thing. And the building still stands. So this big, giant aircraft flies into a building, and the building is intact. I mean, it's not intact, but it's standing. It did not collapse. On the other hand, we have these aircraft that crashed into the World Trade Center towers, and the World Trade Center towers went down. Does it raise questions about 2611? Possibly. Yeah. But we also have to understand the differences. The aircraft that were flown into the Twin Towers, they were flying at full speed essentially. They were trying to accelerate as they hit the towers. Okay? And the Air India aircraft was decelerating. It was losing lift. So the momentum would be very different. Okay, mv squared, mass times velocity squared. The momentum would be very different. I suppose the momentum of the Twin Towers aircraft would have been possibly significantly higher than the Air India flight that flew into a building, into a hostile building or whatever it was. That's that. But even if the momentum is so high, the Twin Towers were made of very highly reinforced steel and steel cages all over the place. And there are still questions as to how they went down, but I'll not go into those questions. But yeah, maybe it's something we should perhaps kind of investigate, perhaps. Okay. Chirag Awasthi says, why don't we have strategic bombers like the B-2 and Russian bombers? Is it because we are more of a defensive power than an aggressive power? It's because historically we have had no ambition of being a great power. During the Nehruvian time, during the 20th century, after the 20th century, until Mr. Modi came to power, we have had no ambition. Mr. Manmohan Singh had famously said that India has no ambition of being a great power. We are happy being in South Asia and remaining where we are, that sort of thing. So when you have no ambition, when you have Prime Minister like Mr. Morarji Desai, who had no ambition from what it looks like, then why would you invest in these expensive platforms? Why would you either buy them or have your scientists and engineers develop them? Why? Right? So that's why we don't have these strategic bombers. The B-2 is very advanced. The Russians have plenty of high quality strategic bombers that date back to the USSR days, but they are still very relevant and very useful today. Right? It's because our leaders have never had any ambition. We are a gigantic nation, and our national interests require that we invest in all kinds of platforms, including strategic bombers, which are very long-range bombers that can drop very significant quantities of of bombs. But we don't have it. It's unfortunate. It makes sense to have strategic bombers, but these are expensive, and we have never developed them. If today we need them, we would have most likely will have to purchase them from probably Russia. It's because of our leaders having no ambition. That's why we're in this situation. Okay. Um, Advut Avdut says the U.S. Congress had a hearing yesterday on the UAP UFO issue. Okay, they almost agreed on the existence of non-human intelligence technology and contact. What's my views? I am super skeptical. There's no question about the fact that these phenomena exist. Last year, during the fag end of Mr. Biden's presidency, there was this UFO outbreak in the US, especially over New Jersey, New York, etc. UFOs all over the place. Now they've decided to call them UAPs. They've rebranded the thing. UAPs. So you had all kinds of UAPs, UFOs across the US. All sightings on live news with the city in the background. They could see a whole bunch of UFOs flying around on live news. So you can't deny the phenomenon. And you had these orb-like UFOs, which are just like balls of light. You had aircraft-like UFOs with blinking lights and all that. You had all kinds of different kinds of UFOs. You even had an aircraft-like UFO tr- transforming into an orb-like UFO. So what I think the situation is that the US most likely has advanced technological programs. And these technologies are what people consider to be UFOs. And I believe that after Mr. Trump came to power, his press secretary, she said, I believe, that this was US technology. It was not UFOs or aliens, what we saw during the last quarter of last year. It was US drones. I think that's what she said. So I believe, I am of the opinion that it's most likely. I think there are two scenarios, scenario A and scenario B. In my opinion, scenario A has 99.9% likelihood of being true. And that is that this is just advanced US technology that is secret from the world. Very advanced technology, but human technology. So that is scenario A. In my opinion, it has a 99.9% chance of being true. Scenario B has a 0.1% chance of being true, in my opinion. And that is that this is aliens who are visiting the planet. Okay. So that has, in my opinion, 0.1% chance of being true. I am not ruling it out. Okay. But I think it's very unlikely. And maybe there's a combination of scenario A and scenario B. That's also a possibility. So I am super skeptical. I don't trust these claims easily. I think that it's most likely US technology. And there's a very small likelihood that there you may have aliens present in in our atmosphere, perhaps. Let's take a couple more questions. Shubham says, "Can India invade Bangladesh to protect Hindus?" Today, we have the news that came out that we expressed strong concern over the unilateral attacks on Iran by the US and Israel. Unprovoked attacks, right? We expressed strong concern about this on the BRICS platform. So if we express strong concern about this, can we then attack Bangladesh unprovoked? Even if Bangladesh is killing its Hindus, the West will say that there is no provocation. It never happened because it's not being reported in the Western media. So even if this is happening, India is not in a position to invade Bangladesh. India is not in a position to do that. It would be great if we could do that and save the Hindus. But at this point in time, forget about the Hindus of Bangladesh, my friends. What about the Hindus of Manipur? What about the Hindus in certain other parts of India? What about the Kashmiri Hindus who are still not able to go back to Kashmir? What about the Hindus of our own country within India who are being terrorized? What about that? Let's first take care of our Hindus, right? Then we'll think about Hindus of outside India. Okay. Okay, this is a good question. This will be the final question of the day. How do space probes, says Amisha, how do they travel through the asteroid belt? They travel straight through the asteroid belt. Why is that? Because the asteroid belt is mostly empty space. When we look at depictions, okay, let's take a look at depictions of the asteroid belt. Let's go to Google. Okay, what does the asteroid belt look like? Let's see. This is how artists will depict the asteroid belt as this. This is a depiction of the asteroid belt. This is a depiction of the asteroid belt. This is another depiction. It looks so crowded. Look here, it looks so crowded. Look at this. So much rocks, debris, dust. Look at this, so crowded. But in reality, the asteroid belt is almost empty. The average distance between any two asteroids will be several million kilometers. You may have increased dust over there, so you will need to take some precautions like shielding and all, just in case. But overall, there's no issue flying through the asteroid belt. So that's how we do it. Don't worry about it. Okay, with that, we have come to the end of today's live stream. All right, I'll end it over here. Thank you so much for all your questions. And I will have a longer live stream, a regular Ask Abhijit session tomorrow. Maybe with Super Chat, maybe not. We will see about that. And Suresh is saying that Google Maps has not been opened this show. Well, yeah, sometimes it happens. So hopefully it'll open tomorrow. So thank you so much for all your questions. Take care. Keep asking questions. Keep raising your standards. And I'll see you hopefully tomorrow. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow, 8 p.m. for tomorrow's live stream. Thank you. Bye-bye.